Welcome back to the Right Wave Audio community. My name is John, and for this video we will continue with our setup of the VTI Audio Rack and talk about some of the things you should consider with this rack. Now, one of the challenges that you have with this type of setup is I don't have any access directly to the back of the units. You know, if you have an equipment rack and you have it in a closet, or you have access from a closet area or something of the sort, it's a lot easier to just sit there from behind and wire this up. In this case, I think it's going to be a lot better to do this layer by layer, because once this gets set up, reaching around the back to put these in is a bit of a blind exercise. Certainly you could stick a cell phone behind there or something like that to give you a glimpse if you're putting that connector into the right connection, but it is a blind exercise. So what I'm going to do, I started to stack this up, but I'm going to back down to the lower level here, put the cables I know that are going to go on to the first unit, which is my ultra high definition Blu-ray player, get those in place, put the next layer on, which is the AV processor, put the anticipated cables on there and so forth, and work my layers up, and then ultimately we're going to be connected in an easier way. So just a quick video today talking about those challenges of getting this VTI rack up and running when you don't really have access to behind of the unit for the ease of connectivity. What I'll do is I'll remove the shelf. I can remove this unit as well. Definitely the shelf. I might as well start as simple as possible. And for this, I know I'm going to need the power connection, the HDMI to the TV, and the coax to the processor. So I'll get those cables. Now, if I was really to do this right, I could rethink some of my cables. These are cables I've had for years now, and this is only going a short distance, one layer up to the processor. I don't need, this is over 6 feet, almost 7 feet. This is the coax cable. I could get away with a 3 foot or even less. So you may want to, as you're building up these racks, rethink, get the cable lengths that are more appropriate for the distance that they have to go. And not only is there's less issues, and of course if you get longer cables, there is some negative aspects to longer. Of course, when you're only talking a couple of feet, it's questionable whether that's audible. But there's a practical reason too, is the longer the cable, the more you have to think about coiling away so that it's not just draped all over the place. So it makes it a lot neater installation if they're only the lengths that are appropriate. Now, the first layer is wired. Obviously, that coax length is way too long. What's necessary? I decided to put the Blu-ray player at the bottom for practical reason. You know, it's a matter of when the tray comes out, it drops in on top, and having to reach up to put the disc in is not as good. So having that sort of like at waist level is really ergonomically, that's where my hand naturally fits. So I like that layer for the Blu-ray, and of course it's our thinnest device, so we can utilize the shortest shell for that purpose. So that in place, shelf. The only cable that has to come up to the processor is the digital coax. Processor goes on next. Now the nice thing, the reason why we don't want to have the processor up too high is the volume knob. It's again it's sort of like at arm's length. You don't have to put your arms up. A little lower is actually better, but we give preference to the Blu-ray player. And the other reason is most of your cables are going to go onto the processor. This is the unit that uses the most cabling. So if we were to have it up higher, then there would be a lot more coming down. So for the cabling, I think this level works pretty well.
This processor has two outlets on the back. We'll use one of them to power the Blu-ray player. Now I will connect the coax cable from the Blu-ray player to the digital DVD input of the processor. Turning the processor 90 degrees will give me better access to the connections. Now I am certain that I connected the Blu-ray player to the right input. The pivoting wall mount for the television makes it easier to gain access to the cabling. I will also move these speakers out a bit. We'll next consider the unit that goes above it, which will be the amplifier. And that connects to the processor, which is also Sony, using their S-Link protocol, which uses a 1/8" phono connector. And so the wire appears to be long enough to reach up, so we can use the existing cable. We will now wire the preamplifier outputs for the surround speakers, and I have the cables over here. As this is only a 5.1 processor and we have both side and rear surrounds, what we do is we fake this out by using a Y connector, sending the same signal to both the side and rear surrounds. So that's the Y connector, and we'll just keep this going until we have a new processor. Here's another example of a less than ideal cable that we should be replacing. I needed the right length, so I'm just using this old composite cable, and we'll just use one of the audio RCA connections, and that's will be temporary. Before I do that, I think I'll just see if I have another cable in the closet that's any better. It's worth a try. Yeah, this is better. This is an old monster cable. So we're using this to connect the amplifier. This is one of the channels. Again, we want to consider what we're putting above this as we stack these up and make sure they're all plugged in advance. These monster cables had a direction on here with arrows. We'll do that just because they said so, but I'm not sure it makes a difference. Here's an old Radio Shack cable. This was never a great cable, and we'd rather not have this in our system. We had it because it was long enough. It's kind of doing its job. Again, we'll try to find a better one. What I'd like to do here is rearrange the Emotiva amps The one in the center handles the center channel today, but the LEDs are facing. I'd like to see the one on the left serve the left channel, the one on the right, and then have the one on top of this rack be the center channel instead, because we don't really have room above the television for the amp, so we'd have to put a shelf up there. Unfortunately, I may have to use one of these lesser cables. So what we'll do is we'll replace this once we get it all set and we know the lengths we need. This is a first generation Apple TV, and what we have is the new 4K Apple TV coming. We just ordered it the other day, so sometime mid-May we'll get one. We need a optical cable for the Apple TV. I may need some longer speaker cable as well.
We got the Blu-ray attached, we got Apple TV connected through optical, we have the TV connected through optical, we've got the cable ready to go for the S-Link, the Sony amp, we have the pre-outs ready to go for the Sony amp, we have the center channel and the right channel amplifier ready to go, and we have the pre-out for the center channel here. Left, right, center. We got them all. That is good. I think we can plug this in. The only thing that's missing is the phono player, which the cables aren't long enough. What we'll end up doing there is finally getting the external phono preamp that we want, the Hagerman, and then we can put a length of cable this way, so we won't be using the preamp of the Sony any longer, or whatever might replace it. So I think that's a good idea. And with that, we're ready to, I think, turn this and get ready for the next layer. One more cable. So when we do the REW and tuning of this, I want to have something that it can plug into. So let's just grab one of the longer cables here. Doesn't really matter what it is. And find an open analog input. Tends to be a CD player. Okay, the power cable needs a little more length. So this was a little too short, so we'll need a longer one there. In the meantime, Radio Shack goes back in. Let's turn this once more again. All right. See if we can turn it now. So, it turns, but can be laid flatly. We're going to be good there. These are our temporary sub cables. And these are going up. I think we're ready for the next layer. The other thing about these triangular things, they look neat. You may have a problem with the center pole in the back if you have a deep electronics, and there's a connector right there, such as the case is when we're using unbalanced connection with the Emotiva. That's a problem. So if that's the case, you may want to go with the 4-leg option versus the 3 that we have. We do have power. And now I can wire up this amp. Now if you're really smart, you'll label everything as you're doing it too. We'll put the S-Link connection in. These are the surround sides and backs. Again, it's a duplicate signal. This is the left channels. Rights. Doesn't have a center channel. That guy just now needs a speaker cable, which we'll bring from the other side. And here's our speaker cable. We wire these just because we could. Surround left. This one's labeled surround back left. This one's surround back right. And this one must be surround right. Yes, it is. So that's done. These do get a little dusty. And then let's do the next layer. Now here the connectors are hitting that pole a little bit, so I brought it out so slightly to match these out a little bit. And the last item, we need a little muscle because it's 80 pounds or whatever. I don't want to lift that every day. Power cord. And then we need the last connection. It'll be nice when we have the new processor we can use all balanced connections. And I guess that's why I'm not being so fussy about putting back some of these low quality cables. We have this last one, and here's the problem is that Emotiva connection is right in the center, and I don't think this is going to fit. And it's not. So I have to either get a right angle connector, or see if I can adjust this out a bit further. First of all, we don't really need this top shelf. Let's just see how it looks without plugging the cable in. Now we just have to plug the speaker in. These are ones I made up myself. Negative goes on the right. And notice I'm not spinning this one around. It's only a few connections, and I'm worried it's so heavy. And that's it. So we can power this up. Well, here is the VTI rack, all in its currently configured state, and we think it came out pretty good here. One last connection to make, and we just got these. This is the last connection we wanted to make. We had the problem where the unbalanced connection to the Emotiva amp, because our preamp today just has unbalanced connections. We needed to get a right-angled RCA connector. So we got this under $10 from Amazon. We know we're only going to be using this temporarily. So I'll plug that in now. And that enables us to push this a little more flush with the front. It still can't go back completely flush, but that's pretty good. And we know when we get a new processor, it's going to have balanced connections, and the balanced connector on the back of this is off center. So that's not going to be a problem, at least with this amp. We can push that back a little further when we move to balanced connections. We just don't know if our new processor is also going to have something in the center deep enough that's going to cause another problem. Of course, the way around that is not to use the 3-pole, but to go to a traditional square, and you won't have that problem. So if you really want to play it safe, don't go with the triangular one that we did. Go with the 4-pole version, the 404, and not the 403. So, but otherwise, we like this. And it does have a nice look. It almost looks like it's floating there in space. So, you know, this just powers up. We've got all the triggers set up, so all the Emotivas come up and running. But beside having this as a nice look, we've got the benefit now of easier access to our record player. And so we can get in here, we can more easily put the records on. We don't have this tower in our way. So that's really good. We have our game station set up here, so we've got Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Wii U, or whatever we might have in the future, which could be our game station, but it can move around. So this is much better. We also like the ergonomics here. We can come right up, where the volume knob is right in a good spot, but more importantly, the tray for the ultra high definition Blu-ray player, which also plays CDs and Blu-ray audio discs. So all our physical media is here, other than traditional LPs. And we can place this nice down right on top loading. And that's a lot better than trying to reach up high, especially when our kids need to have access to it. So we like that a lot better. So, as you recall, we did this for a reason. We wanted to have more room for things. Some of those goals are accomplished. We have some new things we know we have planned for this room. And we had mentioned, yes, we're getting an Apple 4K Apple TV. And that just tucks in underneath, so you don't need a lot of room for that. I can hide behind the television or what have you. And we're going to get a phono preamp. Now the Hagerman preamp is fairly small. That can tuck behind the TV. So those two items really didn't warrant this big switch around. But when we go to power our in-ceiling speakers, we've already bought the speakers, but we haven't bought the amplifier, we'll need a place to put that. Now that could go on the top rack here, or we could get a similar rack for the back of the room and power it from back there. So we have some options. This is a very flexible system, and we really needed that ability to reconfigure this, put in different height rack shelves, depending on what we get and what we have at a given time. So this is going to work out well for us, to accommodate changes in our home theater system. So that wraps up our video here, but what design choices do you have to make for your own components to fit into your theater room? How and where are you placing things? That feedback would be useful to the Right Wave Audio community. Furthermore, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to this Right Wave Audio community, and be sure to hit that bell notification so you'll be notified as soon as the next video is posted. Until then, keep evolving your audio experience.